This is the Hard Thing Podcast. Welcome to the Forge. Welcome back to another episode of the Hard Thing Podcast. This is the Forge, a weekly show that comes out every Thursday to dive deeper into what it's like to do hard things and how to cope with trials. I'm your host, Justin Lewis, and usually on Thursdays I have my co-host with me, Ty Crockett, and usually we talk about challenges we've given each other and so forth. But unfortunately, I'm flying solo today, so I'll be sharing some of my thoughts and impressions. Hopefully you find that entertaining as well. Before I jump in and start talking about rejection, I would like to invite you to go get a free audiobook about rejection called Rejection Proof by Jia Jeng. Follow the author as he goes on a journey of rejection for 50 days. He talks about what he learned about rejection, and more importantly, how to deal with and overcome rejection. Make sure that you don't get rejected. It's an excellent read and also very fun to listen to. So go get your free copy at audibletrial.com/thehardthingpodcast. Start becoming rejection proof today. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thehardthingpodcast. Now, today I want to talk about rejection. I know that there are a lot of people out there that will probably say something like, get over it, stop being a baby, stop wimping out, toughen up. Well, they're right. I'm joking, but only kind of. You see, being able to push through rejection is a majorly useful skill. But for those of us who are still trying to push ourselves above average and get to that point, we need some lessons. We need some tips on how exactly to deal with rejection. And let me be clear when I say deal with rejection, because I mean that in a physical way, not just an emotional way. You see, psychology today says that fMRI studies show that the same areas, this is a quote, by the way. So, quote, fMRI studies show that the same areas of the brain become activated when we experience rejection as when we experience physical pain, end quote. Every time you're rejected romantically, rejected at work, rejected in your business, rejected by your parents, rejected by your children, rejected by your friends, rejected in every facet of life, you will literally feel some sort of pain. Your brain registers it as some sort of pain. So obviously we have to deal with that pain and keep living, right? We have to keep going. So here are 7 tips to help you do just that, to help you deal with rejection. Number 1, you need to learn from it. I recently, and when I say recently, I mean today, I reached out to an individual and invited them to be a guest on the show, a guest on the podcast. And in return, I received a very nice email informing me that we aren't a good fit. And obviously that hurts. But as I read the email, I could feel my stomach sinking, my breath becoming more shallow and ragged. And I felt, these physical effects of rejection. But I paused. I forced myself to pause. And I resolved to send them an email asking for more information to help me know what would make me a better candidate in the future. Basically, I'm going to send them an email and ask them for feedback. Rejection's a blessing, because if we were never rejected, if everything we tried to do worked out, we would never learn or grow, and we would have way too much stuff and way too many commitments. Rejection allows us to shape ourselves and find out what doesn't work and figure out what does, kind of shave off those bits of ourselves that aren't optimal. This is exactly why you need to put on your scientist cap. Which brings me to tip number 2. You need to seek objectivity and perspective. A good scientist understands that even a failed experiment gives valuable data. Anytime you're rejected, you understand that something in that formula that you tried was not correct. So simply test and iterate until you find the right one. It's also important to look objectively at yourself and stop the spread of your rejected feelings from corrupting your understanding of yourself, from corrupting your sense of identities, from corrupting your self-esteem. You need to orient yourself in your world. So this is where you take a moment and you think about who you are. And you don't think about opinions or subjective facts. You think about objective facts, things that are. You have a family that loves you, probably. You have friends that care about you. You have things that you do that you really care about. You have a full life. This rejection does not define you. That's number 2. Number 3, and this is one I'm terrible at, breathe. Breathing is huge for slowing down your heart and relaxing the tension in your body and stopping yourself from blowing things way out of proportion. You see, in ancient days, society was necessary for survival. Your connections with others probably meant connections to food, to social connections, connections to security and shelter. And being rejected could mean death. Our bodies evolved over time to have that fight, flight, or freeze response in order to help us survive. And when we are rejected, we start to feel those same instinctive reactions. And breathing helps you take back control of your body. It helps you wrestle control back from your lizard brain, and it helps you be able to act and think rationally. Breathing is huge. It regulates your heart and your blood flow, and that in turn regulates your entire body because your blood goes throughout your entire body. So take a minute and breathe. Number 4 is to step away from social media for a minute. This is incredibly obvious, but one that none of us do, because social media is the infinite pool of unfair comparisons. Anytime you want to see millions of pristine images of other people doing things that look way better than what you are doing right now, all you got to do is go onto social media. Don't exactly want to feel that way? Well, in that case, just step away from social media for a little bit. And that way you won't compare yourself to other people. I mean, you may still, but at least it won't be such unfair comparisons. You won't be dealing with people who have, 12-pack abs and they have, the hot girl and all these things. You won't make these unfair comparisons because really you should only compare yourself to who you were yesterday, who you're going to be tomorrow, and orient yourself using those 2 metrics. You'll feel better. And when you're ready, you'll be able to step back into social media and use it intentionally and productively. So that's number 4. Number 5 is sweat it out. Sometimes you literally need to fight these physical reactions with a physical reaction. Remember that fight or flight response? Well, go use that energy. Go use that physical energy. Go for a run. Do some shadow boxing. Do push-ups or go climb a mountain. Do anything to use those emotions in a positive way before you let them take you over. The nice thing about this is it tires you out. So the emotions don't really have as much control over you. And it gives you time to process it, which is actually number 6. Number 6 is forget about it and take some time. YouTube videos work very well for me. I used to, at a sales job, our boss would tell us, if you're having a bad day, just watch a couple YouTube videos, and then get back on the horse. You got to make sure not to watch too many. 1 to 3 is probably a good amount. And it doesn't even have to be YouTube. You can go for a walk, go talk to a friend, read a book, do something that you genuinely love. This will help give you time between when you make those hasty reactions, and it'll break that time up. It'll make it so you don't just act in whatever way you think possible, such as giving up on your dreams or changing your careers or doing all sorts of number of things. It'll give you a moment to consider what your actions could mean, which will allow you to take the best action. And it helps with getting that perspective we were talking about. It helps you to see your situation as it really is, because you start to realize that, you were rejected, but life is not all bad, and you still have some good in your life. And I think that's one of the most important things about this one. And last but not least, number 7 is do not attack your self-esteem. Going back to that Psychology Today article, scientists have seen that when you experience rejection, you start to attack your own self-esteem. And I'm guilty of this. I think most of us are, where something bad happens and you naturally blame yourself, but you kind of go the extra mile in blaming yourself, and you start to demonize certain characteristics that you have rather than saying, this is what you could do to improve, and making a conscious plan to do that. And this is all very ironic, especially because your self-esteem and confidence are the very things that can help you overcome rejection and maintain emotional stability. When you have a solid base of self-esteem and you're very confident, When someone rejects you, you understand that it's not your eternal value that they're rejecting. It's not even your value as a person. It's the offer that you had that wasn't a good fit for them. And you also realize that that doesn't mean your offer isn't good. It just means that it wasn't a good fit for them. It's more, the rejection is more about the person rejecting you than about your offer. But that doesn't mean you can't take advice about your offer. But this just means that it's not a matter of value, intrinsic worth, self worth. It's more a matter of packaging and strategy. So you can use this. And actually, this is a great place to use discipline and all the other tips to make yourself not attack your own personal self esteem. Use that perspective just to make yourself see that it's not your soul, your eternal soul, your God given soul that is rejected. It's external things, things that you might be able to change. And if it isn't things that you can change, then you need to be grateful because that means that it wasn't a good fit. So it saves you time as well. So, in summary, number one, you need to learn from it. Number two, seek objectivity and perspective. Number three, breathe. Number four, step away from social media for a minute. Number five, sweat it out. Number six, forget about it and take some time. Number seven, do not attack your self-esteem. These 7 tips are simple ways to wrestle control back from the flood of emotions you're likely feeling after someone has politely or even rudely told you no. And by doing these 7 things, you'll be able to take it in stride and keep on keeping on and persevere to do amazing things. Every person who's ever done hard things has had to overcome rejection. Every person I talked to on Monday shows where I interviewed these guests who've done these incredibly amazing things have had to overcome rejection. And you will have to do likewise. And you can with these 7 tips. Go ahead and comment, reach out to us, and let us know which tip you're going to use first, what you're going to try. And make sure you also follow the podcast on Instagram at The Hard Thing Podcast. There you can get even more content than just the podcast. But thank you so much for listening to today's show. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions. Maybe I'm wrong, but come back on Monday as well for a conversation about foster children, parenting, dealing with your own emotional hurdles, and much more. But until then, my friends, keep doing hard things and you will overcome